An alien fleet, confident in their dominance, captures a lone human soldier for interrogation, eager to learn the secrets of Earth's defenses. But when the soldier draws a star map on the wall, showing the locations of their graves, the consequences of underestimating humanity become clear. The map is a prophecy, a promise of retribution that even the aliens cannot ignore. The chamber was cold, illuminated by harsh, sterile lights. The alien interrogation room smelled of metal and synthetic air. The prisoner, a lone human soldier, was shackled to the table, his eyes glaring defiantly at his captors. Despite the alien presence surrounding him, his posture was unbroken. He was bruised, beaten, and yet there was a calmness in him that unsettled the creatures towering above. The commander stood silently, his arms crossed, watching the human with contempt. He had seen this before. The humans, weak, primitive, had this unnatural resilience that always seemed to grate on their nerves. The interrogator, a tall, imposing figure with jagged features, stepped forward. "Tell us what you know. Where is Earth's defense? How? Did you destroy our moon?" The soldier didn't respond. He just stared, his lips curling into a thin, wry smile. The room grew tense as the interrogator reached for his device, his fingers hovering over it with a cold certainty. The device was designed to break wills, to extract every last secret, and the alien knew it would not fail. But before the device could activate, the soldier's voice broke the silence, low and grating. "You think you've won, don't you?" "No." Interrogator's eyes narrowed. "Answer the question. Where is Earth's true power?" The soldier leaned forward slightly, a glint of something ancient in his eyes. "You have no idea what you've just done." The alien commander sneered. "Tell us, human, or you will die knowing nothing." The soldier's grin widened as though the threat meant little. Then, slowly, deliberately, he began to move his hand across the wall in front of him, his fingers tracing invisible lines in the air. "What are you doing?" the commander demanded. The soldier said nothing. Instead, he began to draw, his fingers leaving faint, glowing marks. The lines connected, forming a rough map, a map of the stars. But as the soldier finished, he stepped back, revealing the full scope of his drawing. It wasn't a map of Earth. It was a map of the galaxy, yet it wasn't marked with the locations of human colonies or military installations. No, the map showed something far darker. The stars themselves were drawn in great clusters, but there were empty spaces too. And in those spaces, the soldier had drawn crosses, clusters of them. He stepped back, his gaze never leaving the aliens as he looked at the map. "These," he said, his voice low, "are the coordinates for your graves." The interrogator froze, staring at the map as the full weight of the words sank in. The commander's eyes widened. "What do you mean?" he demanded, stepping forward. The soldier's expression shifted, a quiet satisfaction building behind his eyes. "Your fleet," he said, his voice slow, deliberate. "You've destroyed everything in your path. And now you're about to learn that your arrogance will be your undoing. The signal you intercepted, it wasn't a call for help. It was a warning. You've awakened something. Something that's been waiting for you." The room fell deathly, silent as the aliens processed his words, the unease in the air palpable. The soldier's calmness was unnerving, and his eyes never left the commander. "You're drawing this," the commander said, his voice trembling slightly. "Because of us?" The soldier nodded. "You fired on Earth's beacon. Now you're going to pay the price. You think your ships, your weapons, your technology make you invincible? You've only just begun to understand what humanity can do." The commander was silent for a moment. His mind raced as the map in front of him began to make a terrifying kind of sense. The human soldier hadn't just drawn a star map, he had drawn a prophecy. And every line on that map pointed toward the inevitable destruction of the alien fleet. It was as though Earth, with all its so-called primitive technology, had already planned their downfall. The interrogator stepped forward, trying to regain control of the situation. "Enough! You are nothing but a prisoner. You will die here." But the soldier's eyes held no fear. His calmness, his smile, it unnerved them all. "You don't understand," the soldier said, his voice almost a whisper now. "You've just signed your death warrants. Your empire doesn't control this galaxy anymore. Earth does, and you're about to learn that the hard way." The commander's hand shook as he reached for the console. He ordered the ship to fire, but as his fingers hovered over the activation, something in the back of his mind shifted. He looked at the soldier once more, standing there with that unshakable smile. It was as if the man knew something the commander didn't. Something that had yet to unfold, and then, as if on cue, a low rumble vibrated through the walls of the ship. A sudden jolt. The commander's eyes widened. The soldier's words had been a warning, and now they were coming true. The ship shuddered again, and the commander realized in that moment Earth had not just created a weapon, they had created an inevitability. "Launch the fleet!" the commander shouted, but his voice was drowned out by the increasing roar of the ship's systems failing. The soldier's map had become more than a warning. It was a death sentence. As the lights flickered and the walls groaned under the pressure of the damage, the soldier's smile never wavered, and that was before Earth even responded. The ship shook again, the reverberations a deep, bone-rattling tremor that rattled the fragile control panels. The commander clung to the armrest of his chair, his mind spinning. The map on the wall, the human soldier's map, was no longer just an ominous prediction. It was unfolding before their eyes. The once invincible alien fleet was now fractured, and every second that passed felt like a countdown to their inevitable demise. "Sir, systems are failing," one of the officers called out, voice quivering as she tapped frantically at her console. "The damage to the ship is escalating. We're losing control of propulsion. Shields are down, weapons systems offline." The commander's mind reeled. The soldier, a lowly human, had drawn that map with no fear, no hesitation. And now it was coming. True. His words, so casual, so sure, had been a death sentence for their empire. The symbols on the map, the crosses marking their graves, were no longer just figments of imagination. They were coordinates, each one pointing to a graveyard of broken ships, destroyed moons, and shattered fleets. How is this happening?" the commander muttered under his breath. He had believed their power, technology, superiority would be enough to crush the human race. Yet every maneuver they made to retaliate against Earth had only hastened their downfall. On the view screen, a galaxy of stars shimmered in front of them, vast and indifferent. But in the cold silence of space, something had changed. Something Earth had unleashed, something far more dangerous than they had anticipated, was now tearing through the fabric of their empire. The soldier's drawing had not been just a map. It had been a promise, a plan. The power of the humans was something they had never understood, and it had cost them dearly. The commander could feel his stomach tighten as he looked back at the human, who sat calmly in his restraints, watching everything unfold with the same unsettling smile. "Why?" the commander's voice cracked. "Why did you attack us?" We were just defending ourselves." The soldier's eyes flicked up, meeting the commander's gaze with a chilling calmness. "You fired on Earth's beacon," he said, his voice low and almost serene. "That beacon wasn't just a distress signal. It was a call to arms. And now you're learning that nothing in the galaxy is as you thought it was." "Enough of your lies," the interrogator shouted, stepping forward, his hands shaking as he glared at the human. "You'll tell us everything, now." The soldier's lips parted in a slow, deliberate smile. "You think you can stop this? You think you can break me? No, it's too late for that. You're already dead, all of you." The interrogator looked to the commander, unsure how to respond. The soldier's confidence was unsettling, as though he had already won the battle. "Sir, the readings—" "I know," the commander said quietly, cutting the officer off. "I've seen the data, the signal, its resonance. It's tearing through us. Whatever they've done, we can't undo it." The officer stood frozen. "What do you mean, sir?" The commander didn't answer. His mind kept drifting back to that map, those crosses marking their graves, the stars where their ships had already fallen. The truth was staring him in the face now. Earth wasn't just a distant, insignificant planet anymore. Earth had become a harbinger of doom. One of the lower officers, panicked, turned to the commander. "Sir, the fleet, they're not responding. Our ships are being torn apart. The stars, they're going out one by one." The commander's jaw tightened. He couldn't believe it. The stars, the lifeblood of their power, were now fading. Consumed by something he couldn't even see, Earth had somehow figured out how to strike at the very heart of their empire without lifting a finger. The soldier's gaze never left the commander. "I told you," he said, his voice low. "You thought Earth was weak. You thought you could control the galaxy, that your superior technology could crush us. But the humans, we're more than just weapons. We're not what you expected." The commander's eyes narrowed. "What are you saying?" he asked, his voice a mixture of anger and fear. The soldier's lips curled into that same unsettling smile. "I'm saying Earth's power isn't in our technology. It's in something much simpler, our will. You fired on our beacon thinking you could silence us, but we've been waiting for this moment, and now you're paying the price." The room was silent. The crew, the officers, the commanders, they were all caught between disbelief and the cold reality of their situation. Their empire, once invincible, was crumbling. The damage to their ships, to their very existence, was irreversible. And the soldier, the human, sat there unmoved, as if it were all part of a plan that had already been set in motion. "Where is the fleet now?" the commander asked, his voice cracking. "Gone," the officer responded, his voice trembling. "The ones that haven't been destroyed, they're lost. The rest of the fleet is no longer responding. We're the last ship, sir." The realization hit the commander with full force. The alien empire had fallen. It wasn't with a mighty battle or overwhelming force that they had been defeated. It had been with the simplest of weapons, Earth's will, its ability to survive and strike back. The humans had become something far more dangerous than they had ever anticipated. The soldier spoke again, his voice quiet but firm. "You fired on us. You thought you could break us, but all you did was give us the power to destroy you." A shudder passed through the commander as he looked at the map, the crosses now burned into his mind. The soldier's words echoed in his mind, but he couldn't escape the truth. They were already dead. They had been from the moment they'd attacked Earth. In the cold silence of space, the last remnants of the alien fleet drifted, broken and powerless. Their arrogance had been shattered, and as they realized the gravity of their mistake, the soldier's quiet smile was all they had left to see, and that was before Earth even responded. The alien fleet, now reduced to a scattered shadow of its former power, drifted helplessly in the void of space. The ships were damaged beyond repair, their systems compromised, their strength shattered. The commander stood in the midst of the chaos, his mind swirling with disbelief and rage. The fleet that had once been feared across the galaxy now was broken, and the fate of his empire was hanging by a thread. The soldier's star map, that simple drawing of crosses marking their graves, had turned into a cruel prophecy, one that they were living in real time. "How much time do we have left?" the commander asked, his voice barely above a whisper, but it carried the weight of 1,000 lifetimes of arrogance now crumbling before him. A technician, pale and wide-eyed, tapped at his console, his hands shaking as he delivered the grim report. We've lost all communication with the fleet. Most ships are offline. The ones still functioning are too far to assist. We're isolated. The remaining power in the fleet won't last long. We're drifting." The commander's heart dropped, the weight of his failure pressing down on him like the vastness of space itself. How had they been so blind? How had they underestimated Earth, those primitive humans who now held their fate in their hands? "Then we're finished," he muttered, his words heavy with the truth he was unwilling to face. The officer next to him cleared his throat. "Sir, there's still one thing we can try. We may be able to broadcast a final message to Earth, a plea for mercy." The commander's eyes snapped to the officer, his expression hardening. "Mercy? You want us to beg for mercy after everything we've done?" The officer flinched but stood firm. "We may have no other choice, sir. Their power is beyond anything we can comprehend. We've seen it firsthand. The destruction of our moon, the collapse of our fleet, the crosses on that map, those were no idle threats. We need to at least try to understand their terms." The commander shook his head, his fists clenching. "What mercy can they offer? Us, we destroyed their beacon. We attacked them first. We thought they were weak, but they've already proven us wrong." There was silence in the command room as the crew processed the weight of the commander's words. Every officer in the room had been raised to believe in their invincibility, but now they had been reduced to this: broken, vulnerable, and completely powerless against the force they had ignited. "I'll take the responsibility for this," the commander said, his voice now heavy with regret. "We fired on them first. We thought we were untouchable, but in doing so, we sealed our own fate." A quiet hum filled the room as the last operational tow. Ship systems flickered on. The alien commander had never felt such a deep, suffocating silence. Their once proud fleet was now reduced to a handful of broken vessels, crippled and drifting. The only sounds were the slow hum of the power systems and the occasional beep from the still-functioning consoles. In the interrogation chamber, the human soldier remained sitting calmly, his face expressionless, his arms shackled. He had watched the fall of the fleet with an eerie detachment, as though it were nothing more than the inevitable result of the choices the aliens had made. He had known all along that Earth wasn't just a target. It was a warning. The soldiers on the fleet and their commanders had underestimated the resilience of humanity. They thought Earth's silence meant weakness, but now the price for that misconception was unfolding before their very eyes. The soldier had seen the cracks forming in the once mighty alien fleet even before the moon shattered, and he had known what was coming. As the final battle raged in the distance, he had only one thing left to do: wait. And now he was waiting for their final act, one that would either seal their doom or grant them a shred of redemption. It was no longer a matter of victory or defeat. It was about survival. Back on the bridge of the flagship, the commander stared at the screen in front of him. The last of the fleet's power flickered, and for a moment the thought of surrender passed through his mind. But no, he couldn't do it. He had been raised on the belief that they would never bow, never yield. The pride of his species, his people, had always been their greatest weapon, but now it had become their greatest weakness. "We still have one more option," the officer at the console said, breaking the silence. "We can send a final transmission, a last-ditch effort to communicate with Earth. If they're listening, we might still have a chance." The commander stood motionless for a long time, his mind spinning. He had no way of knowing if Earth was listening, if the humans would even care to respond after all the destruction they had wrought. He thought back to the soldiers' map, the crosses marking their graves. The irony was not lost on him. They had always seen themselves as the conquerors of the galaxy. But now they were the ones being hunted. The decision weighed heavily on him, and for the first time in his life, he realized the full cost of their arrogance. "Send the message," he said finally, his voice hollow. "Let's see if Earth will grant us a final chance." As the message began transmitting into the void, the commander knew it was too late. Even if the message reached Earth, the damage was done. There was no going back. The soldier had been right. They were already dead. And as the message drifted out into the stars, the alien commander watched helplessly as the final lights of his fleet flickered out, one by one. And that was before Earth even responded. The message to Earth had been sent. It was a final, desperate plea, an attempt to reach out to the very species they had underestimated and tried to crush. The alien fleet, broken and drifting, waited in the vast emptiness of space, unsure of what the future held. The commander stared at the blank screen, the last remnants of the message still echoing in the depths of space. They had done everything they could, but the realization was sinking in that it was far too late for anything to make a difference. Now, the fleet was in shambles, crippled by the very power they had ignored. The moon they had once controlled lay in ruins, a reminder of how far their arrogance had taken them. "Sir, the transmissions, they're still coming," an officer said, his voice shaking. "Earth's signals, they're not stopping, they're getting stronger." The commander's heart sank as he realized what the officer was implying. The signals that Earth had been sending, those simple, seemingly innocuous messages, were now reaching a crescendo. The pulse, once faint and seemingly harmless, had grown in intensity. The forces behind it were something far beyond their understanding. The officer continued, his words heavy with dread. "It's not just the signals anymore. The energy we detected before, it's building again. It's spreading. Whatever they've done, it's starting to unfold. We can't stop it. The countdown is still in progress." A cold shiver ran through the commander. He had tried to fight back, tried to maintain control, but now there was no longer any hope. Their fate had been sealed the moment they fired on Earth's beacon. "Earth's power isn't in their weapons, is it?" the commander murmured, more to himself than to anyone else. "It's in their patience, their will." The officer nodded, grimly. "Yes, sir, and their ability to wait, to let things play out until they're ready to strike. We should have known." In that moment, the commander understood the full extent of his mistake. It wasn't just Earth's technology that had brought them to their knees. It was the human ability to endure, to turn the tables when all seemed lost. They had played the long game, knowing that the moment the alien fleet showed any weakness, they would strike. The commander looked out the viewport, his eyes drawn to the distant stars that were fading into the blackness. Their light, the very thing that had fueled their empire for eons, was now nothing more than a dying ember. In the silence of space, there was no victory to be claimed, no words to offer solace. The alien fleet, once so certain of its dominance, was now broken and drifting toward the unknown. "We've made a terrible mistake," the commander whispered, the weight of his failure pressing down on him. The officer didn't respond. There were no more words to offer, no more plans to make. The battle had already been lost. The alien fleet continued to drift, the signals from Earth growing louder, more insistent. The commander knew now that their time was running out, that they would never again be the rulers of the galaxy. The humans had not just fought back, they had outlasted them, and now they would inherit the stars. A final wave of energy pulsed through the fleet, stronger than any of their technology could withstand. The alien ships began to flicker, their systems failing one by one. The cold vacuum of space claimed them, as it had claimed so many before them, and as the last light of the alien fleet faded into the void, the commander's last thought was one of quiet resignation. Earth had answered, and they had answered with finality, and that was before Earth even responded.